The third amendment that I'm going to offer, Madam President, I have not spoken about on the floor to date, and I want to take just a minute to describe what this amendment deals with. It's an amendment that I plan to offer that addresses the issue of industrial hemp farming. It is co-sponsored by Senator Rand Paul. It is identical to legislation in the other body with 33 bipartisan co-sponsors. This is, in my view, a textbook example of a regulation that flunks the common sense test. There is government regulation on the books today that prevents America's farmers from growing industrial hemp. And what's worse is this regulation is hurting job creation in rural America and increasing our trade deficit. When my colleagues get, I think, more information about this outlandish, outrageous restriction on free enterprise, I think most of my colleagues are going to say that the restriction on industrial hemp is really a poster child for dumb regulation. The only thing standing in the way of taking advantage of this very profitable crop is a lingering misunderstanding about its use. And the amendment that I have filed on this issue will end a ridiculous regulation once and for all. Right now, Madam President, the United States is importing millions of dollars of hemp products to use in paper products, construction materials, textiles, and a variety of other goods. We're importing a crop, Madam President, that the U.S. farmer could be profitably growing right here at home if not for government rules prohibiting it. Our neighbors to the north can see the potential for this product. In 2010, the Canadian government injected over $700,000 into their blossoming hemp industry to increase the size of their hemp crop and fortify the inroads, Madam President, fortify the inroads that the Canadians are making in U.S. markets at the expense of our farmers. It was a very good bet. U.S. imports have consistently grown over the past decade, increasing by 300% in 10 years, and from 2009 to 2010, they grew 35%. The number of acres in Canada devoted to growing industrial hemp nearly doubled from 2011 to 2012. Now, I know that there are going to be members of Congress and others who are listening to this, and they're going to say, all this talk about hemp is basically talk about marijuana. The fact of the matter is, while they come from the same species of plant, there are major differences between them. Major differences between them, and I want to just take a moment to recognize what those differences are and to focus on the benefits from producing domestically the hemp we already use. Under this amendment, the production of hemp would still be regulated, but it would be done by the states through permitting programs, not the federal government. 9 states have already put legislation in place to provide for a permitting system that enforces the prohibition on marijuana and ensures that industrial hemp maintains a very low THC level under 0.3%. The lowest grade marijuana typically has 5% THC content. The bottom line, Madam President, is no one is going to get high on industrial hemp. Now, hemp has been a profitable commodity in a number of countries. In addition to Canada, Australia also permits hemp production, and the growth in that sector helped their agricultural base survive when the tobacco industry dried up. Over 30 countries in Europe, Asia, and North and South America currently permit farmers to grow hemp, and China is the world's largest producer. In fact, our country is the only industrialized nation that prohibits farmers from growing hemp. Oregon is home to some of the major manufacturers of hemp products, including Living Harvest, one of the largest hemp food producers in our country. Business has been so brisk there that the Portland Business Journal recently rated them as one of the fastest growing local companies. Now, there are similar success stories in other states with industrial hemp. One company in North Carolina has been incorporating hemp into building materials, reportedly making them both stronger and more environmentally friendly. Another company in California produces hemp-based fiberboard. No country is better than ours at developing, perfecting, and expanding markets for our products. As the market grows, it ought to be domestically produced hemp that supplies that growth. Madam President, I'd just like to close on this topic with a couple of the statements by one of the leading newspapers in my state, the Bend Bulletin. And Madam President, I think it'd be fair to say that the Bend Bulletin would not cite itself as one of the first places that you ought to look for left-wing thinking. And here's what they had to say with respect to this proposition when they encouraged support for my amendment. I quote here, "Producers of hemp products in the United States are forced to import it. That denies American farmers the opportunity to compete in the market. It's like surrendering the competitive edge to China and Canada, where it can be grown legally." The editorial then goes on to say, and I quote, "Legalizing industrial hemp does not have to be a slippery slope towards legalizing marijuana. It can be a step towards removing regulatory burdens that limit Oregon farmers from competing in the world market." Madam President, I would ask unanimous consent that a copy of the editorial from the Bend Bulletin on this issue be printed in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
So, Madam President, for a farm bill that empowers farmers and increases rural jobs, let's give them the tools that they need to get the job done. Let's boost revenue for farmers and reduce the overhead costs for the business around the country that uses this product. And let's put more people to work growing and processing an environmental-friendly crop with a ready market in the United States. Madam President, for all the reasons I've described, I will be urging my colleagues to support this amendment so the law can be changed and farmers are not prevented from growing a profitable crop in the future. Even though my amendment is about growing a crop and should be clearly relevant to the Farm Bill, it may be blocked from getting a vote because of the Senate rules on what amendments are allowed to be offered once cloture is invoked on the bill. If I get the opportunity, I'm going to bring this amendment up through the regular order, but if cloture is invoked and my amendment is not allowed, I want colleagues to know that I will be back at this again until there are smarter regulations in place for industrial hemp. Madam President, in closing, let me say that I don't think you can overstate the importance of the best possible farm bill. Senator Stabenow and Senator Roberts have, in my view, done yeoman work in trying to build a bipartisan approach. And the question now is, can we use the amendment process to improve on the kind of bipartisan effort they brought to the floor? In each of the areas that I've described this afternoon, the question of improving the farm-to-school program, the question of how we can take steps to wring more value out of the SNAP program, better nutritional outcomes, and then help a promising industry, the industry of industrial hemp. Each of these areas, Madam President, gives us a chance to attain the objectives of what I've described as the best possible farm bill without spending one single dime of additional taxpayer money. Not a dime of additional taxpayer money.